Welcome back to Zakima's Ridge Homestead. I'm Brian, and today we're going to take a look at this Rhino 85 backhoe that came on the back of our New Holland tractor when we bought it. First part of the video, we're going to explain to you what we've already done to get it operational. In the second part of the video, we're going to change the 18-inch bucket that's on it out to a 12-inch bucket. So come along and let's have at it. Hello, and welcome to our channel. We're glad you're here. When we bought the tractor, we knew that the backhoe had a couple hydraulic leaks on it. The one, when you'd go to move the stick, I believe, out, it would leak. And when you try to move the bucket, I believe also curled out, it leaked a little bit. And where it leaked was right here underneath the boom pivot. So what we ended up doing, can't see in there very well, there's 6 hydraulic hoses that come down, run behind the boom cylinder, underneath the boom pivot. This is a cover plate in here. It's got a bolt that holds it on here, and there's one up inside of the boom that holds it down. All 6 lines run under here. 2 of them come out and go to this cylinder. 2 of them run up through the boom, come out here, wrap underneath, and go to the cylinder that runs the stick. And 2 more of them run all the way out the end of the boom, loop up here, and come down and attach to the cylinder that runs the bucket. So what we did was take all these cylinders off, all the hoses off, replaced all 6 hoses, just for the simple fact that the other 4 didn't look too good. So we thought rather than do all this work twice, we'd just go ahead and replace all the hoses at one time. We took all these pins out, cleaned all the bores in both the backhoe itself and in the cylinders, put the pins back in, greased everything up real well, and got all the joints working good. That's something we didn't realize because of the way the hoses were leaking, was the bucket didn't move. It would only, you'd go to curl it out and it would just go like this. It just barely even jerked at all. So what we ended up doing was taking all these pins out, just like we did on the rest of the backhoe. This top joint pin here, we had to heat this quite a bit to get it to come out. If you are unfamiliar with backhoes, which I was to begin with, this plate here goes on both of these pins, and on the other side, both of those pins are welded to this plate. So those 2 pins have to come out together, which made it even more difficult because they were both kind of rusted up. So again, we got both of those pins out and lubricated all that real well. And then we got down to the 2 bucket pins. We were able to get this pin out. This pin didn't want to budge. It looks way different than it did when we started. These 2 bolts that are here now that hold the pins in, they weren't there at all, basically because they weren't needed. The pin was probably sticking out about 1 inch on both of these and completely mushroomed. When I get these out, I'll kind of show you what I had to do to try and fix them the best I could. Apparently somebody changed the bucket in the past, and rather than taking the time to clean these pins up and do it correctly, they just beat them in there with a sledgehammer until they couldn't beat them in any further. I said the ends of these pins were just horrible. You can kind of make out a little bit right here where this is beat up from the pin being rolled over. But we had to put the pins on the mill and rebore the holes because they were almost flat. They were beat so bad. So like I said, this one here wouldn't budge. So what we ended up doing, let me think a minute. I'm incorrect. This pin we did get out. This pin down here is the one that wouldn't budge. When we got this pin out, this is probably almost impossible to see, but here's where that pin runs through. Underneath this cylinder, in the front of that channel, there's a grease fitting. So there's a bushing on this half and a bushing on this half with a gap in the middle for that grease fitting to add grease in there for this pin. The bushing on this side had been pushed all the way in tight to this bushing. So we ended up having to drive the bushing from this side all the way through to this side and knock this bushing out, and then take the bushing from this side and put it in here to the correct depth so that we had that gap in the middle for the grease to go through. Once we did all that, we put this top link on and put this pin back in, used a rosebud on a torch, and just kept heating all this area down here on the bucket and on this link, and hit it with an air impact and the torch until we finally got it to move. And at one point, I was holding a torch in one hand. I had the air impact hammer driving on the pin with the other hand, while Paula worked the hydraulics back and forth to get to keep the pin moving. And eventually, we finally did get it to come out. So then again, we cleaned up all the bores, cleaned up the pin, and got it back together. And now it works real nice and smooth. So I'll fire this thing up and kind of show you how well it works right now. And then we're going to take this 18-inch bucket off and put this 12-inch bucket on. And when we do the 12-inch, we need to clean these bores where the pins go because they're pretty rusty. So when we do that, that'll kind of give you an idea what we had to do with the pins over here. So let me start the tractor up and I'll show you how smooth this thing runs now. As you can see there, everything does work as it should now, nice and smooth. And I'm going to try and kind of show you here what the bucket did originally for us. Before we cleaned the pins up, that was about all the movement we had out of the bucket, just that slight little jerky motion. So let me get it back in position and we will pull this 18-inch bucket off and install the 12-inch bucket. Okay, the first thing we'll do is take two 9/16 wrenches and remove the bolts that lock the pins in place. Okay, once these two bolts are out, we'll start with this pin and drive this pin out. Yep, it popped right in, easy. So I'll just take this brass drift, rubber hammer, just tap this pin out. And there's the first pin. Now, that should release that, and our bucket should swing here on its bottom pin, or its pivot pin. So we'll try and tap this pin out. There we go. That pin dropped right to the floor. And our bucket's now hanging on our brass pin. Sure, there's a better way of doing this, but this is just how I'm doing it. When that gets our 18-inch bucket off, we can just slide it back out of the way. I'll try and show you here on these pins. I think you can kind of see how the top is rounded over from being mushroomed. I had to grind back probably that deep to get it to smooth out to where it would go in the hole. and I had to run the mill. I kind of missed this side a little bit. I had to open this hole back up to get the bolt through because it was almost smashed down flat on this side especially. They just had this thing just crushed down like you wouldn't believe. You can kind of see the way this top is rounded down this way, because this was probably this big around that I had to grind off of there on both pins. This one was worse than the other one, but that's what we had to do to get the pins cleaned up. Clean these holes up like I did before on the other one. What I used was my drill and a 1-inch flap wheel sanding wheel. Basically just stuck it in the hole. Clean all that rust out of there. I think you can probably see that rust dust just flying out of here. If you can see or not, but this one's been beat with a hammer as well, and there's actually a pretty good lip right here around this edge. So the pin would probably come in from this side, but it's not going to pass through. So I'm going to have to get one of those little carbide burr wheels and run around this outside edge and take all this this lip off of here. Okay, what I did was stick the pins in already, and they're nice and smooth in there, but this top pin, it's hitting. There's a small burr right here, and of course this bottom pin is hitting hard. So we'll take this carbide burr and clean the edges of these up until the pins slide through there nice and smoothly. That might be enough for the top. Not quite. Now, up top here. Just about. Very close. Okay, there we go. Now the pin goes all the way through. So we'll repeat that process for the bottom one. I won't bother filming it, it's just going to take a little while longer. Then I'll take both pins out, get them all cleaned up, get all these shavings cleaned out of here, and then we'll reattach this to the tractor. So now what we'll do, set these pins back. We'll slide this bucket up on the stick. Line this up and get that pin to go in. Okay, it's started in. Exact, line this side up. Tapping through there nice and easy. turn my hole so my bolt will line up. Okay, we're just not quite lined up on this side. Should be pretty close. There we go. And there it comes, right through. Pushing some grease with it. So now if that should be lined up, we can take our bolt, knock our bolt back in, put our nut back on, and then hopefully, if we're not out of position, we can get this bottom one to go in. We need to line this pin up. It's almost all the way through already. Turn it so our bolt can fit in there. Tap it in. So now we'll put our nuts back on and tighten both of these bolts up that hold the pin in place. Wipe these pine needles off, and then we will grease this. Okay, I'm hoping with my light shining up in there you can see well enough. There's the one grease fitting. Okay, I greased it till I saw it oozing out of both corners. Now we'll do this bottom pin. Okay, it's oozing out of both sides, so that'll grease both of those and keep them from hanging up again. If you've got any questions or comments, you can put them down below. I'll try my best to answer them. This is the first time I've ever changed the bucket on this. I did have that 18-inch bucket on and off a couple times when we were working on it to get it, freed up, but I've never actually done the size swap before on the buckets. This 12-inch bucket we just got last week. When we bought this tractor, I saw this bucket laying in the ground behind the garage, but he had mentioned about another tractor, so I didn't think too much of it. One day last week, I just shot him a quick message, said, hey, I noticed that bucket behind your garage. Do you need that? Are you interested in selling it? So he ended up selling us the 12-inch bucket. And as you can see by the paint on here, I don't think this bucket was used a whole lot. They must have used that 18-inch a lot more than this one. So now we've got this 12-inch bucket on here. We'll just leave it on. I don't know if you noticed or not, this does have good teeth on it, whereas the 18-inch bucket right now has no teeth. There was probably a tooth and a half left on it. I do have new teeth to put on it, but until I use it, I probably won't bother putting those on. We'll make sure on that 18-inch bucket, I'm going to spray all 4 of those holes real good with fluid film to make sure they don't rust again. And we'll probably keep that bucket inside here somewhere instead of keeping it outside where it's going to get rusty. So like I said, any questions or comments, please put them down below. Appreciate it if you subscribe and give us a thumbs up. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next video. Have a good day.